Every second you breathe, a microscopic countdown is ticking inside your marrow. It is a biological timer that no medicine can stop, and no wealth can buy off. Your cells are programmed to fail, built with a self-destruct sequence that ensures your inevitable exit from the world. But deep beneath the crushing pressure of the Mediterranean and the silent shadows of the Pacific, there is a creature that has solved the riddle of the end. It is a tiny, translucent organism no larger than a fingernail, known to science as Turritopsis Dohrnii. While every other living thing on this planet is sprinting toward a finish line, this creature has found a way to turn the track into a circle. It does not die of old age, it simply resets. It is the only known entity to have unlocked what some call the Immortality Code. And as we speak, there are those in the shadows of the biotech world who are willing to tear the human blueprint apart just to find the switch. This is not a quest for health. It is a war against the very nature of time, and the deeper we go, the more it feels like the code is not a gift, but a warning. The mechanism of our own demise is written into the very tips of our chromosomes. Scientists call them telomeres. Think of them like the plastic tips on the ends of shoelaces that prevent the cord from fraying. Every time a human cell divides, these tips get shorter. When they run out, the cell can no longer replicate. It withers, it stops functioning, and eventually the entire system collapses. This is the Hayflick Limit, a biological wall that suggests humans are physically incapable of living much past a century. It is a built-in obsolescence, as if we were designed to be disposable. We are the masters of our environment, the architects of civilizations. Yet we are tethered to a leash that shortens with every heartbeat. We are born with a debt to time that must be paid in full, and the interest is our own vitality. This reality creates a desperate friction in the human psyche, the conflict between an infinite mind and a finite vessel. We have the capacity to imagine forever, but we are trapped in a body that begins to die before we even learn how to live. Contrast this with the silent, rhythmic pulsing of the immortal jellyfish. When this creature faces physical trauma, starvation, or even the natural decline of aging, it doesn't just wither away. It undergoes a process called transdifferentiation. It is the biological equivalent of a skyscraper collapsing back into its original blueprints and then rebuilding itself from the ground up. Its specialized cells, the ones that make up its muscles, its nerves, its stinging tentacles, begin to transform. They lose their identity, reverting into a primitive state of stem cells. Within days, the adult jellyfish has transformed back into a polyp, a tiny sprout on the ocean floor. It is a child once more, ready to grow, mature, and eventually reset again. It is a loop without an end, a defiance of the very laws that govern life and death for everything from the smallest insect to the largest whale. It suggests that death is not a biological necessity, but a setting, one that can, in theory, be overridden. This brings us to a chilling hypothesis that many researchers are afraid to voice. Is the human timer a mistake of evolution, or is it a deliberate security feature? If nature is capable of creating a biological reset button, why was it omitted from the human blueprint? Imagine for a moment a high-end laboratory hidden from public scrutiny, where the Jellyfish Protocol is no longer a theory, but a pursuit. Here, the air is thick with the scent of sterile chemicals and the hum of gene sequencers. They aren't just looking to cure a disease, they are looking to break the wall. They seek to induce transdifferentiation in human tissue, to force a cell that has forgotten how to be young to remember its origin. But the deeper they dig into the genetic code of the Turritopsis Dohrnii, the more they realize that the code isn't just a set of instructions. It's a lock. And unlocking it might mean breaking the very thing that makes us human. Some theorists suggest that our complexity is our cage. A jellyfish is simple. Its cells can be easily reformatted because it lacks the dense specialization of a higher mammal. A human being, with its trillions of synaptic connections, its memories, and its intricate organ systems, may be too heavy to be eternal. There is a hypothesis that the software of the human mind is fundamentally incompatible with the hardware of an immortal body. Consider the horror of a biological reset in a human. If we were to trigger transdifferentiation, your skin might become young again, and your heart might pump with the vigor of a teenager, but the cost would be the unmaking of your history. To reset a cell is to erase its specialization. In a brain, this would be a catastrophe. The pain of such a reset would be unlike anything known to medicine. It is the pain of unmaking, a sensory overload where every nerve ending is being rewired and dissolved simultaneously. Imagine the feeling of your very bones softening, your structure liquefying as the old instructions are overwritten by the new. But the physical agony is nothing compared to the cognitive dissolution. As the neurons revert to stem cells, the architecture of your brain, the physical home of your soul, would begin to blur. The memory of your first love's face would fade like ink in a rainstorm. The grief you carry for a lost parent, the language you speak, the skills you spent decades mastering, all of it would be scrubbed clean. You wouldn't just be young, you would be erased. You would emerge as a 500-year-old infant, a blank slate in a recycled body, wandering a world you no longer understand, surrounded by ghosts of a life you can no longer remember. The quest for the loop is, in reality, a quest for a beautiful kind of suicide. The dark fascination with this jellyfish hasn't stayed within the realm of academic curiosity. In the shadowy corners of the biotech industry, the pursuit of the reset has become a modern alchemy, but the cost of this research is written in blood. To find the switch that triggers cellular rollback, researchers must experiment on the edge of biological chaos. In the jellyfish, transdifferentiation is a controlled, elegant process. In a human, when cells lose their identity and begin to replicate without a limit, we have a different name for it: cancer. Every cancer cell in your body is essentially an amateur trying to be an immortal jellyfish. They ignore the signals to stop. They bypass the Hayflick Limit. They refuse to die. They are cells that have unlocked the immortality part of the code, but lost the reconstruction part. The Immortality Code is a double-edged sword, and right now, our bodies are holding it by the blade. Imagine the first successful human subject of a primitive jellyfish treatment. At first, it seems like a miracle. The wrinkles vanish. The gray hair returns to its original hue. The subject feels a surge of energy they haven't felt in decades. But then the instability begins. Because the human body was never meant to loop, the cells begin to conflict. The new and the old fight for dominance in a civil war under the skin. Tissues begin to transform into things they shouldn't be. A lung cell might start trying to become a heart cell. A patch of skin might begin to revert into a mass of undifferentiated stem cells that grow without form. It is a slow, agonizing dissolution of the self. A biological melting where the body forgets how to be a human and tries to become a primordial soup. This is the hidden risk of the quest for eternity. Not a graceful rebirth, but a catastrophic loss of biological form. A body that remains alive but is no longer a person. Beyond the physical horror lies a societal nightmare. If we were to bridge the gap and successfully implement a version of the Jellyfish Code, we would not be creating a utopia. We would be creating a permanent, stagnant hierarchy. Imagine a world where the ultra-wealthy can afford to cycle every 40 years, essentially living through the centuries. A CEO who has sat on the same throne for 300 years, accumulating wealth that can never be redistributed. A political leader whose prejudices were formed in a different millennium, now etched into the fabric of society forever. In such a world, the young would have no place. There would be no room for new ideas, no passing of the torch, because the torch never goes out. The world would become a museum of the living, a static society where the right to die becomes a luxury that only the poor are forced to afford, and the right to live forever is the ultimate commodity. It would be a world that has stopped moving, choked by the weight of its own past. Death is often viewed as a tragedy, an ancient enemy to be defeated. But biologists are beginning to see it as a feature, not a bug. By ensuring that every individual eventually passes, nature allows for a rapid turnover of genetic material. This is the engine of evolution. If we lived forever, we would stop evolving. We would become a static species, a biological dead end. The jellyfish has remained virtually unchanged for millions of years because it doesn't need to adapt through the death of its predecessors. It is a perfect, unchanging loop. We, on the other hand, have climbed to the top of the food chain precisely because our lives are short and the pressure to adapt is high. Our mortality might be the very thing that made us human, the fire that forced us to build, to dream, and to love with a desperate intensity. When you remove the finish line, the race loses its meaning. There is an eerie silence in the deep ocean where these jellyfish thrive. They float in the dark, timeless and indifferent to the world above. They do not build cathedrals, they do not map the stars, and they do not fear the end because for them, the end is just a new beginning. They are a living challenge to our understanding of the universe. They suggest that the ticking clock we feel in our bones is not a universal law, but a specific setting, a choice made by the forces of nature to favor complexity over persistence. We look at them and see a miracle, but we must also consider if they are a mirror reflecting our most dangerous desires. They represent the ultimate survival, but at the cost of the ultimate stagnation. What happens to a mind that has lived for 1,000 years? Our brains are designed to filter and prune memories to keep us functional. But a millennium of experience would be a crushing weight. Imagine carrying the grief of 10 different lifetimes, the faces of children long dead, the memories of a dozen different spouses, the exhaustion of seeing history repeat itself until every war and every invention feels like a rerun. We might find that the human psyche has its own internal Hayflick Limit. There may come a point where the soul simply tires of the light, where the software becomes so cluttered with the data of centuries that it crashes, leaving a body that is physically young but mentally shattered. The immortality of the jellyfish is only possible because it doesn't have a mind to break. For us, forever might be the ultimate prison. The search for the edit button in our DNA continues in labs across the globe. Researchers are currently mapping the genome of the Turritopsis Dohrnii, identifying the genes that are overexpressed during its transition from medusa back to polyp. They are looking for ways to repair DNA, to protect telomeres, and to reverse age-related diseases like Alzheimer's and heart failure. These are noble goals, but the line between healing and resetting is razor thin. If we can repair a heart, why not a brain? If we can repair a brain, why not the entire body? And once we have the power to stop the clock, who among us will have the strength to let it start again? The temptation to press the reset button will be the greatest test our species has ever faced. As you sit here now, The telomeres in your cells are a fraction shorter than they were when you started listening. Your heart has beat a few hundred times more, and each of those beats is a withdrawal from a finite account. The clock is moving. The cells in your skin, your heart, and your lungs are following a script that was written long before you were born. It is a script that ends in a final silence. We are a species that refuses to accept the no written into our DNA. We are obsessed with the jellyfish not because it is beautiful, but because it is a rebel. It has broken the one law that we all must follow, and we want to know its secret, no matter the cost. But perhaps the Immortality Code is a siren song leading us toward a different kind of extinction. A world without death is a world without the urgency that defines the human experience. We create because we know our time is limited. We love because we know it cannot last. We strive because we are running against a deadline. If you remove the deadline, you remove the meaning. The jellyfish has all of eternity, yet it does nothing with it. It simply exists, a pulsing ghost in the machinery of life. To follow it into the loop is to trade our fire for a cold, eternal glow. The mystery of the immortal jellyfish remains one of the great unsolved puzzles of biology. It stands as a bridge between the possible and the impossible. As we peer into its microscopic world, we aren't just looking for a way to stay young. We are grappling with the shadows that such a discovery casts. Is our mortality a prison, or is it the wall that gives the room its shape? Is the ticking you feel in your chest a countdown to a tragedy, or the rhythm of a life that actually matters? The answers are not found in the lab, but in the way we choose to spend the minutes we have left. The ocean floor is littered with the secrets of a billion years of trial and error. The jellyfish is a successful experiment in one direction, the direction of persistence. We are an experiment in another, the direction of consciousness and complexity. It is possible that these two paths are mutually exclusive. You can have the loop, or you can have the climb. To attempt to be both might be to invite a breakdown of the biological order that has sustained life since the first cell divided in the primordial soup. We are reaching for a power we may not be built to hold. Somewhere, in a darkened lab or a deep-sea trench, the search continues. We are a species of explorers, and the last frontier isn't space or the deep ocean. It's the internal clock that dictates our end. But as we reach for the reset button, we must ask ourselves what we are willing to lose to gain forever. The jellyfish doesn't have an ego, it doesn't have a soul, and it doesn't have a choice. We do. And in that choice lies the true essence of being human. The ticking continues, the cells continue to divide, and the code remains hidden, perhaps for our own protection. The question is no longer, can we live forever? But rather, if we did, would we still be human? The jellyfish remains silent, drifting in the dark, waiting to see if we are brave enough or foolish enough to follow it into the loop.